Welcome to the Post Ride Podcast. Lee Kahn, Ryan Lois, and myself discuss our amazing motorcycle trip through Spain in late October and early November 2022. This is episode 10. It's Monday, November the 7th, and we've got to get from Valencia to Granada, and it's going to be a long ride. We got up in the morning in Valencia. It was gorgeous weather, not a cloud in the sky. We're at the tail end of our trip now. We're starting the return back. Big goal was to get to Valencia for MotoGP. We did that the day before, and now we're aiming at Granada. And how are we going to get there?
For me, it's one of those unknowns. I knew Barcelona and Madrid, southern Spain excited me because of the influence of Moroccan and African cultures. Everything from what we rode Valencia south, I had no idea what to expect. Didn't know Granada existed, didn't know the Alhambra existed, didn't know the roads or territory or terrain or anything. Everything was a surprise to me.
We had about 300 miles we had to cover. We knew it was going to be a pretty good ride, and we had to, like many other days, stay focused. There's a lot to stop and see. There's a lot of cool things you could eat and hang. We had quite a ways to go. We wanted to get there, and we knew we had booked a really awesome place to stay, so it was exciting to get down there.
The first part of the ride out of Valencia was more faster roads to get to Helene, and then from there our goal was to get to Yesti, and then that was really the entry point into the national park. We can see the map. We came out of Valencia, something like this, and then to Helene, and then over here to Yeste, and then you've got the park, the natural park that we went into. It started out very fast on the freeway highway kind of pace, and then it went down to 2 lanes, and we're going through the countryside, and there's olive plantations everywhere as far as the eye can see, just these rolling hills covered in olive trees, and there's just not a lot of people around. And as we got into the park, it really goes down to a single lane, so it just kept getting smaller and smaller from freeway all the way down to a single lane through the park. And the fall colors were just amazing. The trees were bright yellow in some of the areas, and you had these dramatic cliffs. And I think one of my observations was, God, this is almost as good or better than the Pyrenees. I was super pumped about the Pyrenees and riding through the mountains, but when we get into this part of Spain, I wasn't expecting it to be so much terrain and rugged as it was, and we rode right through it, which was really cool.
Yeah, a lot of those orange trees, they were almost like aspens. I don't think they were aspens, but they had that look of kind of that bright orangey, just holy smokes, look at this beautiful gorges. And the rivers were just amazing. A lot of elevation changes. It's just spectacular riding.
I led the tail behind you guys for a bit, and I think I started to use my camera recording or figured it out at some point. I do believe I have some shots going through that area. In my brain, I do.
Look, every time you turn your camera on, Ryan, it's like pointing at your feet. I don't know how you did it, but the camera's pointed down. You either took photos or you shot video of basically your hands on the handlebars. Really was one of my favorite days of riding. We had perfect weather, warm, blue skies. Lots of great terrain. I just remember asking Lee at one point, I'm like, is this what you came for? And yeah, like you said, Ryan, it was a surprise. We weren't anticipating this day being that good at writing. We just knew we had a lot of writing to do, and it was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, we had the Pyrenees in mind, and we encapsulated that in the trip. That was the main focus of the trip, besides from MotoGP, hitting Madrid, Barcelona, San Sebastian. Everything was icing after this, and it was some of my favorite bits of the whole trip. Not knowing what the Alhambra was, not knowing what Granada, Spain was, and finding all that out. Then, of course, the journey is the main bit.
But the day got better and more interesting the closer we got, because most of that really good riding was closer to Granada.
Yesti and the towns that are along there, they're just built into these mountains. Two buildings on either side of a narrow road, and you're coming through these turns and you pop into these towns and narrow streets. There was nobody around. We saw very few cars, really very few people in general. We were definitely outside the tourist season, but it was empty. I felt like we had the whole national park to ourselves. It wasn't like when you go to Yosemite in California, it's elbow to elbow everywhere. It was just empty. We didn't really have to worry about someone coming the other way. We saw maybe a couple of cars like that, but no trucks and very few people, which was really nice.
We came across the gas station on that hill, and there was a
Yes.
sitting down. That reminded me of West Texas, just in the middle of absolutely nowhere, off season.
There was an old guy leaning up against the gas pump as we pulled up, missing teeth, and another guy sitting over on a chair, and they're just hanging out, nothing to do. And we were the day's entertainment rolling in on our bikes. And Lee struck up a conversation with them. We hung out there for a bit to take a break. So it was all heavy duty riding to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I was out of gas. That was one of the nerve-wracking things, because the XR would get low on gas before you guys would on the GSs.
That was a beautiful day. You're absolutely right. The weather was impeccable. You're talking 70 degrees, beautiful sun, blue skies, legit.
There was a reservoir that we came across inside the park. We pulled over and just stopped there. No cars anywhere. Hung out, took some pictures, took a little break, and then kept going on from there.
It just seems so simple down there. You ride around through a little valley, through some elevation, then you'd see a gap. Then here's a little town on a hill, lots of those whitewashed, beautiful buildings. When you wind through the mountains, and then you see that little village, and you go through that one and up the hill, lots of changes, lots of trees. It would open up, and off in the distance, here's another beautiful little Spanish town. Maybe only looked like 500 people live there, maybe 1,000 people or something. Very idyllic, very agricultural, and quite simple and beautiful.
Then you come out of the mountains and there's olive trees just as far as you can see in every direction. Then you're like, okay, I get where all the olives come from.
Literally millions and millions of trees, and each one of those has seemingly thousands of olives on them, and they all have to be picked by hand some kind of way. Those people have to come from somewhere, and that goes back to the similarities with California and some of the citrus and some of the picking of the grapes. Somebody's got to do all that work. These olives have been picked. Now what do you want to do? Because there's nothing around there. It's just the trees. It's just olives. Then it got better, didn't it? After all that glorious riding.
Provincia de Granada. Ay,
Provincia de
muy
Granada.
bien. Ay, ay, ay. Hello, goats.
We had reservations to a cool Airbnb right in the middle of Granada up on the historic hill. We rolled into town. It looked like an industrial town in a valley. Then you just go up the hill, up and up. We're getting pooped out at this point. We've been riding almost 7 hours, then wound our way around through some crazy streets and alleys and cobblestoney, slippery stuff. I remember thinking to myself, I'm so glad we got this beautiful dry weather, because how sketchy would some of that stuff been if it were wet? Till we found the location, which was pretty cool.
We came into Granada. It reminds me of Reno, Nevada feel. It's got the Sierra Madres, called the same thing, just like we have the Sierras in California, but the backside, the eastern side, very dry. In fact, one of their shopping centers is actually called Nevada Shopping Center that we rode past in Granada. We get into the old Muslim part of town where the Alhambra is, and it was technical, windy, cobblestones, ancient streets, not even older than medieval. We found our place. And the guy that met us, he had refurbished the Airbnb right before COVID. He was a civil engineer. We talked to him about the roads and how good they were in Spain, which was funny. We had to take the bikes down the street to a parking garage with an elevator lift.
He had arranged some parking for us because there was literally nowhere to park. It was not that kind of place.
We went down, and it's like a secret Batman cave that you push a button and an elevator comes up. We loaded the bikes on the elevator and it takes you down. We're going to our Airbnb with our host. Very, very cool old place. Oh, I just stepped in it. Just kidding.
We got changed immediately, and you guys darted because you had a goal in mind. And I'm so thankful that I chased you guys because you guys were hop, skipping, and jumping up a hill, round a corner, up another hill, and then another hill, and then some stairs, and some more stairs, and then another hill. And we got to that plaza. It was worth every bit of being out of breath.
That was the only bit of information I had was that location and that viewpoint at sunset is just an absolute magical thing. Do not miss. Bucket list. For the love, make sure you're standing there at sunset. We tortured you because you were exhausted. Everybody was exhausted. We had no food. It was like, all right, throw your bags down.
And the hill is where they have a cathedral that then overlooks, there's like a little valley that overlooks the Alhambra. The reason you get up there is there's a lookout tower and a cathedral. You can see across and see the Alhambra at night, which is all lit up, and we were perfectly situated. We were there before sunset, which was incredible. And then we watched the sunset on the Alhambra, and we went up in that tower. There were people everywhere, and then Ryan got the most amazing footage of the girl dancing with the gypsies playing the music right there at sunset. That was one of the coolest moments.
Yep, that was called Plaza de San Nicolas. That is the famous place that you overlook the Alhambra on sunset, and not just the Alhambra, but all of Granada. You could see everything from there. People were hanging around and being romantic and doing the whole touristy thing there. But man, was it special, wasn't it? Every 2 minutes, it was like, oh, wow, look at the Alhambra. It's even more beautiful. 5 minutes later, it's, oh, wow, look at it. I probably took more pictures in that 30 minutes than I did the last 3 days.
We spent a solid hour up there. John said the Gypsies, the band, gave it all the ambiance in the world, but I said I was hungry, and I had my first couscous that's not out of a box. We continued our 4.7 higher, and we found a golden nugget.
And did we ever? We were starving to death. I was so blood sugary at that point. We stumbled down that mountain, and the place was called Bab Mansour. Man, that place was awesome. They brought us a rose hips tea or some delicious sweet tea that just rejuvenated us. And here comes the hummus, and here comes the couscous, and here comes the lamb kebabs. It was just outrageously good. Everything was so good.
Yeah, I promised myself I'll go back there.
That was not Spanish food. That was into the full Moorish Moroccan cuisine, which was exactly the right thing to do at that moment.
I'd made that request. I said, I want some Moroccan food. I'm not going to get to Morocco because for some reason you guys don't want to take the bikes and stuff to Morocco, blah, blah, blah.
That was a jamming meal, monkey brains and all.
And then we went back to our killer Airbnb, great find, Lee, right in the heart of it all. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site around the Alhambra and the Alhambra itself. Bucket list, right? And go to Granada, go see Alhambra. And that's what we're going to do the next day. We're going to go take a walking tour of the Alhambra.
Yep, that was a hell of a day. That was awesome.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll see you on the next day when we go tour the Alhambra.